Hello everyone, welcome back. I'm Jacob Silverblade, and today we're just going to be reviewing the balance update, which is hopefully coming next week, Monday. They said it will be early in the week. Hopefully it will be coming soon. I will say I've got a slight cough, so you'll just have to deal with me. I am drinking water as we speak. I do apologise. It's probably why I didn't do it yesterday. And I will say, I also spent yesterday just trying to gather feedback from somewhat, on Discord, from what people have been saying about this changes and stuff and what they think. Trying to get some people's opinions and whatnot. Trying to give overall feedback, what everybody roughly thinks, so I can take it all in and then say what I think based on that. So, what they've said is they've recognized that Dark Angels and Sisters of Battle are the most powerful two factions in the game right now. They're trying to nerf those two, whilst giving certain other things like the counter attacks for certain factions, as well as certain legendaries for those same factions, buffs. So that, legendaries, there's more of a payoff to actually getting a legendary card, so it's more of a swing just playing this legendary, and it brings things more into your favor, whilst these counter attacks mean that it's not as bad probably going second. I think that's roughly their plan. So just going over the Dark Angels and Adeptus Sororitas, I do agree with them. Those two factions are the most powerful in the game, without a doubt, right now. And I think they've done an appropriate nerf for Adeptus Sororitas. Right now, the Adeptus Sororitas are an S tier faction, and with these nerfs coming in, I do not think they are unplayable. I really don't. I think they're just a B tier faction. I think they are... how do I put this? They're still good. They're still good. They're not bad, but I don't think they're broken either. I think these changes will put them in line where the game really them should be. We'll go through some of the changes. Basically, it's 7th Faith and 8th Faith for the Erica's and Junus abilities for their extra additional effects. So the stun effect and deploying additional sister. These are just good things. It's far too easy just to get to that stage before. These should be late game effects, not early game effects, and that's what was happening at this stage, particularly with relics. It was so easy to get to 6th Faith, to be honest. They've changed relics as well, so this should be even harder now, and it should be a late game effect, which is a good thing overall. Relics, of course, have been changed, so it only gives 3 Faith now. This is the only thing I guess I slightly question. They do rely on this a lot. I wonder how easy it will be to get up to those high faith values if you can't get that thing going early. And that's what felt like 4 energy card was meant to do. It was able to let you get those things going early, but you had to sacrifice the 4 energy tempo for that thing to be able to get going. Adeptus Sororitas Rhino, this absolutely needed changes, and thank goodness it only deploys 1 sister. And secondly, it doesn't synergize as well with Beacon of Faith, because it will come into play at the end of your turn, and which means that since it's the end of turn, you can't use Beacon of Faith to buff it up on the same unit, buff up the unit which got deployed on the same turn. This is a completely fair change. I think Sororitas Rhino, like the Imperial Guard, I'm just going to compare it to Imperial Guard right now. The Imperial Guard have a banner bearer, and they have a 4 energy unit, which is the same stat line as this Rhino, and it deploys a unit with the rally ability, with the same stat line as the Sisters, Sacred Rose, Scarred Rose sister. It's the same stat line. So they deploy everything at the same rate. The only difference is that Scarred Rose sister can be more powerful than the extra guy if you have the right faith points. So if anything, Sororitas Rhino deploys an even more powerful unit and can deploy the unit again next turn where the banner guy can't. So I think this is a completely fair change. And I think the Sororitas Rhino, by the way, is still a totally playable card. It's still a decent card, it's just not broken. And then finally, Beacon of Faith. They just increased the faith requirements, which was absolutely needed. 4 faith to get additional life and 7 faith to get that increased attack and range. This was a good thing. This was / is a good thing. This will be a good thing, I suppose. Yeah, that's what I think about Cetrasaurus. I think all these changes, maybe the exception of relics, I think they needed to happen. Then we got Dark Angels. Personally, with Dark Angels, more changes need to happen. Right now, as it stands, that Azrael will still be too broken, and it is my opinion that the problem isn't necessarily these Dark Angel cards themselves. It's more just Azrael's ability for free, getting the same as Orokin's ability, but Orokin actually has to pay 1 for its effect, where Azrael just gets it. Is what's broken. I think Azrael could play virtually any gameplay style as it stands. He could go for go wide deck, and it would totally work. Trust me. His talent comes far more useful than for a go wide sort of gameplay style. And the fact that he can get these Deathwing Terminators just guarantee their teleport is so strong. I just think it's a bit much as what Azrael's doing right now, and I think this does make the Dark Angels the most powerful faction in the game right now. Because also the Deathwing, the 9 energy cost card, hasn't been nerfed either. I think it should also get nerfed. Like, at least nerf it with this. They're nerfing the Deathwing Strike Master so it doesn't give it to the Warlord as well. I just don't think the Night Master, I think it's called, the 9 energy cost card, I don't think it should give the buff to the Warlord either. That's my opinion. I think they could at least do that and see where they are next. I still think Azrael's still going to be too strong, even despite these nerfs. And then there's certain other cards, like I think it's the 1 energy card, Ancient Reliquary, that shouldn't give +3 life. +3 life is always the best option, by the way, in virtually all scenarios, pretty much. Yeah. Ultramarines, I think Ultramarines are now finally, with these changes right here, there's some legitimate gameplay styles you can definitely play. I've released another Lavaris deck shortly, and that uses, Tactical Doctrine being particularly strong. I think with these changes now, I think they should be a good faction. Land Speeders and the Victor Warsuits are good for vehicle decks. These two getting their changes means that you can now get a bit more better payoffs when you go for the successful go wide. Outriders is another nice change, just a permanent buff, and Blade Guard should be alright. Finally, Light Cover. I think I don't have Light Cover as a counterattack card, so that's why I'm not using it. But I think this is where I've gone a bit too far with, to be honest, because it gives camouflage as well now, which I think giving +1 armor is perfectly alright. And that's my opinion. I'm surprised this sees play, particularly with Varus able to healing that troop every single turn. I think this is perfectly alright as it was, and I think it's going to be very strong. It is. Arguably, we don't need this buff. I'm just saying, I don't think Light Cover needs to give camouflage. Oh yeah, and finally, Vara Tigurius, brilliant change. Absolutely support this. I think Vara Tigurius, after these buffs, should able to make a codex, like a heavy codex strategy, really work. I've got some ideas on how to actually do that with Varo, and I think that would be pretty cool. I would love to see that. Then we got the Black Legion. I think the Black Legion did need some buffs. They've focused particularly on 5 energy things and some not so seen cards, trying to buff them all up to make them see a bit more play. Soft stuff would go with Xyla Hexcorn. I'm gonna go on a rant about Xyla Hexcorn. This is not how you buff Xyla. I don't like it. It's still gonna be an unplayable Warlord. Even right now, even with this buff, he's got guaranteed Abaddon's Chosen in your hand, and you guaranteed give something a bonus. I still think Xyla Hexcorn not playable, and that is because his talent is terrible. It's not as if the things he could generate is terrible. It's just that they're all situational for different situations most of the time, and they're not. You can't dictate at all what you're going to get. As a result, he's a bad Warlord. You can't plan around it. You can't plan your deck around what he does. You don't know what's going to happen. You just basically can't do anything. You're playing the lottery. You know, you can try and make a decent deck, try and do the best you can, but you're still playing the lottery and hoping you're getting the right thing at the right time. This is how I think they should change it. I think at the start of the turn, you should be able to choose what power you get. However, you can only choose one that you didn't choose before. So let's say you chose Diabolical Strength on the previous turn, giving that +2 melee and +1 healing 1 to all of your units. Very powerful card, by the way. Let's say you chose that last turn. I think if you're not able to choose, which one you had on turn, you could somewhat manage it to decide what you want this turn, what you want the next turn, sort of thing. But you can't choose the same one in a row. So you can't just go Diabolical Strength, Diabolical Strength, Diabolical Strength. You have to switch things up. So on some turns, you have to go for the Smite power. Certain turns, you have to go for Diabolical Strength just to clear the board. And some turns, you have to go for the buff power, because you've got a big unit already in the field, and just buffing up even more would be very strong. And that's how I see you should be able to change Xyla Hexagon. At the start of your turn, you should be able to choose the psychic power you want, but it cannot be changed the same one as you chose last turn. That's my personal opinion. Scottcorn Berserkers, good change. They needed that range attack buff. Havocs, I would say, is pointless over the Sorcerer, unfortunately, because the Havoc literally has no ability. Literally none. It's just a stat body, and the stat body is worse than the Sorcerer. So you're just going to use the Sorcerer, which also has a talent, which is the same as Xyla Hexagon. Yeah, it's random, but you might get the better ability, and guess what? You have a better body anyway, so who cares? The only relevant biggest change, though, is more Master Possession. I think this is a very good card now. I think this can start replacing some of the 5-drops, /, just being added in to addition with the other 5-drops. Because right now, you don't have that many good 5-drop options, and Master Possession is actually, I think, an actual contender for this 5-drop option, so this is legit. Child of Torment, you've got so many 6-drop options which are way better than this guy that this guy's never done see play. Chaos Lord, people have been saying this guy's good now. Personally, I think there's like a 25% chance to gain Vanguard and a 25% chance you gain Camouflage. I do apologise. So, you gain Vanguard, you know, like, on a turn where you could die, you have a 25% chance of it being useful. And on a turn where you don't have to die, so you'd rather have Camouflage, they don't hard removal it, you have a 25% chance it just can't be hard removaled, I guess. It certainly makes it more playable. It's probably on the right card now, but my personal opinion is that the Chaos Lord isn't that strong. Still, it's alright. Finally we got into, well, not finally, but Demonic Pact. This is the legendary, the 4NG legendary they have. It's a terrible card as it was. It's a brilliant card now and potentially too strong. I just give him invulnerable until your next turn. That's perfectly fine. It's a legendary. It can do that. It's just giving vulnerable 2 to all enemy troops as well. That's a bit much. I think it should only give vulnerable 1. For example, the Necron card, I know it's not a legendary, but the Necron card, it's 4NG, gets vulnerable 2 to all enemy troops, and that's all. It doesn't give any kind of invulnerable. And it gives them vulnerable until your next turn? Oh boy, this is a powerful card. I think it should only give vulnerable 1. That's my opinion. Spreading Corruption, it's a bad card anyway, so making it free cost, I think it could see some play now. I think it's not too bad. Hellfire Pit, 0 cost. I'm not particularly bothered. There's worse counter-attack cards out there. It's a very strong card, don't get me wrong, but I'm not screaming over the hills about this being 0 energy cost. And Throne of Heretics, yeah, this had no play over Hellfire Pit. Hellfire Pit being the best one, but now it makes it cost 1 less. I'm perfectly fine. Next up, we got GSC. And personally, everyone, I don't think GSC needed buffs. I just think they just were in a position where they got... I mean, I tried to talk with BJ a little bit, and I know he's a good GSC player. He's certainly beaten me before with some GSC cards, and I think that, they're good. That's the thing. I think they're just a good faction. So it is my personal opinion that they did not need these buffs. And that they were just perfectly fine anyway. So we're going over some of the cards. Pretty much here to here, like here, these are buffs to cards which don't really matter. I mean, like, I think Summon the Cult was actually a decent card anyway. Making it free cost would make it actually a really decent card. I think this is going to start seeing play, but I don't think any of these cards, maybe except Open Insurrection, I really don't see play. Hulking Aberrant and Abominant, they still got 0 range attack. Yeah, the extra life is nice, so they can't be killed as easily, but I think you're still just not able to kill it with just some range attack guys, to be honest, so I'm not too worried about this. Acolyte Specialist, it's nice, it puts him with the other 4 energy card, which can put a sabotage in your opponent's hand. So it's a bit debatable, I suppose, which one you use, but I think both are fine. Perfect Host, still think it's a bad card for 2 energy. I think this is a really, really bad card for 2 energy, actually. I'd rather put, like, anything else in, to be honest. Then we get into the legendaries, and the legendaries Living Icon, I just think Living Icon was already a good card. That is my opinion. I think it's already a good card. And now that it decreases the cost of the unit by 1 as well, yeah, that's a bit much in my opinion. Bit much. I think it's a bit too much. I think it does too much for 3 energy. Like, it will decrease the cost of itself and draw you cards in like 3 turns. So yeah, this is too strong. I think it should never have gotten this change. Now the Patriarch. The Patriarch did need a buff. I agree with this. It was just the worst legendary you could get. However, the problem is that right now sabotages are broken for GSC. The best decks are still sabotage decks. That hasn't changed. This really, really, really does synergize with sabotage. Because you can easily go turn 1, you give them a sabotage. Turn 2, you give them a poison sabotage guy. Turn 3, you give them Informant Network, whatever it's called. So you put Underground Network, I forget what it's called, but it's the 4 energy card which made all sabotages cost 1 more permanently. And now they just put, and it also adds another one to their hand. So you can just easily put 3 sabotages that they have to deal with into the opponent's hand. And basically, if you do that turn 1, they have to remove it. They do that turn 2, you have to remove it. Maybe they play something else. Turn 3, you know, you're starting to see idea. They've got a very big hand. And all they've literally done is just play the sabotages and just try to get rid of them. And you've tempoed somewhat as well. And the fact that after all of that, you can just get a Patriarch with flank with a 1 energy cost card, or maybe the 2 energy cost card, which gives it flank. And it come down, and now you get a permanent +3/+3 on your Warlord as well. Yeah, that guy's too strong. This shouldn't be 14 cost. This needs to be like a 16 cost /15 cost. That's too strong. I think GSC is now, if this comes into it as it is, GSC is now still the most broken, other than the most broken faction in the game. Excuse me, I do apologise. No, and that's purely because Dark Angels exist. But my god, is Patriarch going to be a problem? Like a serious, like not good for the game sort of problem. So, unless they nerf Sabotage. If they nerf Sabotage, then we're talking something different, right? And I did make a recommendation beforehand on how to nerf Sabotage, because that's the problem with GSC. Sabotage is the problem, and that's too strong. That's my personal opinion. I've said this before, is that Sabotages should cost 1 less at the end of your turn, apart from like the 3 energy Sabotage, which just sticks in your hand, and that's the whole point of that card. But all the other ones should cost 1 less every single turn at the end of your turn. So, but that means that their effects will trigger. For example, Poison Supplies, at the same time it's costing 1 less, is when it will get a Poison Supplies trigger. So quite often you have to remove that anyway. But if it means that decks which go late game aren't just suddenly screwed because there's GSC deploying Sabotages in people's hands all the time. So yeah, I think I really appreciate think that's a really important change so that they don't just get screwed over by having so many sabotagers in their hand they can't play anything, and then they can't play the big vehicles either, and they're left in a place where like all they can do is remove a sabotage in a turn or two maybe, and they put 3 back into the opponent's hand, and they're kind of like, man, this sucks. I think that is a terrible place for the game to be in, and the fact that the Patriarch supports that even more so, I don't think it's good. But yes, now we're going to get onto the tier list section and what I think each faction, where they are after these changes, where I think each faction will be in terms of power level. So we're on to the second part of the video, the tier list. So to explain, this is the first tier list I've done. So got S to Z tier. S means you're uber broken and you probably need nerfs, and Z tier means your faction doesn't work. And then of course this is everything in between. If you're a faction, ideally you're in between these points right here. You should be an A tier or D tier faction. This is where I think the game should be based around, or it should be based around. And it shouldn't be based around S tier factions, and it shouldn't be based around Z tier factions. I think S and Z are like too weak and too strong. So with that being said, these are the things I'm using for each faction. This is Ultramarines, these are Orcs, blah blah, as you can probably tell. These are just the codexes from the tabletop game. I'm just using them as a presentation stand-in to represent them. So let's get on with the video, because I've done this about twice now and it's taken too long. First off, Ultramarines, I'm very confident they are a B tier faction. Now, to do the changes, you got multiple different play styles. You got Titus, you got Lavarius, and I think Tigurius is going to bring a very solid codex kind of style, kind of gameplay. That's what I'm thinking anyway. I think they're in a very solid spot. I think they belong. I think they do belong in the B tier. I don't think they belong in A tier. But I think that someone could present an argument to me right now that actually Ultramarines are A tier. They are a solid faction. They can do some things now, and particularly the changes. I think Lavarius has only got better. I think Tigurius has only got better, and Titus was already good already, and there's nothing which has got worse about him. So yeah, I think they just don't quite have that fundamental broken thing they can do. They don't have that yet. They don't have their broken thing, but they do have a very solid, I think, game plan for each gameplay style, and they all work very well. Next up, we got Necrons, and I think they're C tier faction. The reason why they're not D tier is because they can pull off some broken, not broken, but some very powerful plays. They can get, the Flayed One to produce a whole bunch of Flayed Ones. They've still got the Ramatech guy, which can still put so-and-so, and they still got Orokin with Scarabs. You're still a pain in the ass because of that. And that's like a C tier warlord, because if they don't have removal, guess what? You win the game. When I say removal, I mean a board clear. But if they have a 1 damage board clear, you're not in a great place. But it's totally dependent on whether they have that or not. So hence, by default, you are C tier because of Orokin. But I think actually as a better warlord, you're better off playing that 35 HP warlord, which is able to put down a Necron warrior every single turn. With that remnant ability, you got guys which got resurrection orb, and you got stuff like that. However, you do, in my opinion, have to somewhat do a combo to get into a good place. And a good player can very much use them well. However, I think that's why they belong in C tier. Fundamentally, they're just slightly weaker than what everybody else kind of does. Orcs, you're always going to be solid. Orcs is best, clearly. You've got very solid flank troops. You've got the Squig Buggy, you've got the Veteran Stormboy at 6, you got No Bucking Bow at 4, you've got Scorcher Assault, you've got a lot of these removal pieces, and then you have the armor up cards as well to protect you and keep you alive. Gordrang's a good warlord, and I think Gruk is also a very good warlord as well, with his ability to card draw into other guys. You got some combo other decks as well, with Green Tide, I think it is, or something like that, where you're able to cost all your troops by 2 less. With Tide ability, it's very good, but that only works if you combo off. What I'm more talking about is like the removal strategy with Will of Gorks and stuff like that. That's certainly B tier. And since because every single Orc Warlord can always just play into that, I think you can't be anything less than B tier. Now, you're not doing anything broken either, or potentially broken, or like very, very strong. And that's why you're not on A tier, because there's nothing like very, very strong that you're pulling out the bag, which you're doing. And I think Ultramarines actually arguably are starting to do that now. I'm still putting them B tier for now, but I can see why someone can say they're A tier. Orcs, you're not doing that, so you're a B tier faction. Tyranids, I am basing you as an A tier faction. Yes, I know it's only Swarmlord. I'm not going to sugarcoat that. You are only Swarmlord, but right now, as it stands, Everguild does need to do something about this, where it's only Swarmlord. You got like Turvagon in B tier, and all the other warlords are either C or D. They're not unplayable, but you know, they're not strong. But I have to place it on the fact that Swarmlord exists. And since because Swarmlord exists, you're an A tier faction. I'm taking the best decks at the end of the day. And if there's only one best deck, I have to kind of base it on that. And for that reason, you are an A tier faction. Swarmlord is a very powerful warlord. The fact that you can just remove something for free, the fact that you got so many stealth units, the fact that you got Ravenous Hunger and stuff like that with Synapse. Synapse is such a broken mechanic, to be honest. You can do some absolutely absurd things with Swarmlord. It's not good. But I mean, like, it would be weaker if all the factions got solid anti-stealth, but not every single faction has a solid anti-stealth card. And I do mean solid. Like, the Tyranic War Veteran Vulturines isn't really that great. It's not really solid. The reason why it's not solid is because it doesn't actually deal with the stealth units. It just reveals them, and you have to get something else to deal with them. So, there isn't really a solid anti-stealth for most factions. That being said, Swarmlord is a very good warlord, and you should try it. Now we got Sisters. Sisters, they've got some heavy nerfs. They used to be here, without a doubt. They're here. They are below Orcs, because fundamentally, what people might be thinking, well, you can't go late game because you can't get that faith going and all that stuff, is that's not why I'm rating them at B tier though right now. I'm admitting the fact that the late game is a rare and occasional scenario, and it isn't always going to happen. But what you do have with Sisters, you still got so much like flank troops and like removal pieces and stuff like that you can play still Sisters very, very well. You've got so many flank troops. Like, you've got the 4 energy flanker, you've got the 5 energy flanker, you've got the 6 energy flanker, you've got the 6 energy legendary flanker with the shield. Excuse me. You've got the I'm trying to think. Oh, you've got Cleansing Flame for 4 energy. You've got the old 4 energy card which puts down 2 Sacred Rose Sisters and gives them flank. That's still totally playable. You've got so many things for flank. It's kind of crazy. And it's a problem. But that's with your faith reduction. I'm not saying it's completely that's the thing. You can still get to that late game where you got a Junith, which is just like, you can't really combo off with Junith summoning a 2/2/2/2/2s for 2 energy, summoning 2 guys at the same time. You can't really plan to combo off that, but in the late game you probably can get to a stage where you can just do that. And since because you've got so many flank troops, you can really control the board, and it should lead you into a decent solid place. So B tier it is. They're kind of doing Orcs, it's just in a different way almost now. Next up we got Tal. Tal, they're like Necrons. They've got combo plays where you can summon a whole bunch of drones out in a single turn. They're not absolutely screwed. You've got certain things you can absolutely do. You've got some powerful units, but your power level isn't quite there, personally. Your just fundamental power level isn't quite there. Yes, you've got some very strong things you can do. and there's certain combinations you do, but you have to like draw into them, so it's not reliable. So I think C tier along with Necrons, I don't know which one's better. It's hard to say. I'll review that at the end. Eldar, you got lucky. You are like here, where I'm holding it right now. You got off lucky, and you should be thankful for it. Because my golly, you got so many flank troops. You got Jane Star for stun. You got Reclaimed Stars for Anvia. You've got so many things, so many broken things, and your card pool, your 30 card deck card pool is so strong. You got so many flank troops. You got so many options. You got things which put things into stealth even, like which is just not. That's not even used because it's not part of your top 30 cards, but you have that as an option. You got things which turn your hand for 1 energy, reduce the cost by 2. You know, there's things which doesn't see play because it's not part of the 30 cards, and it's crazy to me. You're a very solid faction, very solid. There's pretty much nothing wrong with Eldar. The only thing you could say about Eldar is that they lack the hard removal for late game. But apart from that, I mean, like, there's pretty much nothing wrong, and you're pretty much always going to dominate that, like, early to middle game. Like, there's very few factions which can compete with you on that. Chaos, you're a solid faction. I think Abaddon is more powerful than Swarmlord now, because you've got that where they've got Ravenous Hunger now. You now have your 4 energy invulnerable. And you give all his troops vulnerable too, which is really nice. So, with that being said, that's more of a buff to Galaron. That being said though, Abaddon, I'm confident in saying it's better than Swarmlord because of that change. And now you're in this place where you got a few more 5 energy options. You know, you got a few more things here and there. Your counterattacks are slightly better, which is going to bring you even more into the game. You're a very solid faction. There's nothing really you struggle with. And even the one thing I'd say is your hard removal isn't so great for 4 energy. It's destroy damaged enemy troops, so you have to figure out a way of damaging it. But even then, what the things you need to be hard removing are like these big, when I get into it, the Dark Angels, but big units with no range attack. So you just range attack it, do all that 1 damage, hard remove it. You want a very solid pot. GSC. I think I've consistently put GSC here over reviewing it. So I'm probably going to leave it here. I don't know if you're better than Eldar yet, though. You might be, which is the scary part. That's the scary part. With the changes to GSC, they're already a very solid faction with so much sabotage. Like, sabotage is good against anything, but it's worse against a faction which is trying to go late game. It's terrible against a faction going late game because they pretty much can't play the game at that point because of GSC sabotage. Every single deck should have sabotage in it. It's just fundamentally the best way to play GSC. And now that I've been even better supported with you drawing more cards, reducing the cost of cards, absolutely scary. It kind of reminds me of Magus. And now you have a Patriarch which can just says turn around on that tempo sword tile, and if you get that with flank, my god, is it a problem. So yeah, Dark Angels, I have to base things on Azrael. If I was basing things on Asmodai, you're like here. You're better in Chaos. I'd probably put you here if you're basing things on Asmodai. I can't do that though. I have to base things on Azrael. And Azrael still belongs here, no doubt about it. With all the Deathwing which you can do, like, I'm just going to make this clear. You would still probably be here if all the Deathwing got nerfed. Because your Azrael's ability to fundamentally decide what's at the top of his deck is fundamentally broken in my opinion. There's so many things you can do with that. You can like put at the top of your deck card draw if you're running out of cards. You can put at the top of your deck a big unit if you got that's the perfect play. You need removal. You can put at the top of the deck removal. You just need to play a Vanguard at that point. You know, there's so many things you can do with that. It's such a broken ability. Like, try playing a Desperate Mission Azrael deck. You'll start using your hero power because it really synergizes. Azrael's ability really synergizes once you get like 3 units on the board. Giving them all +1/+1 is really strong for 2 energy. And the fact that Desperate Mission can just synergize with that so well, it's a legitimate deck. Like, Asriel Desperate Mission deck is a legitimate deck. Try it. It's scary. Like, they expect more nerfs coming next month. Finally, you got Imperial Guard. I think they belong here. Oh no, they belong here. Bottom of B tier. I think they just fundamentally aren't that bad of a faction where you have to combo off. You can still just put a troop down every single turn, and you're not in a bad place depending on what you get. If you get some of the legendaries and get some like the big Vanguard units of armor like the Bullgrin and stuff like that, you're not in a bad place. You can still go for Siege Warfare Denkler deck. You can still go for that I'm trying to think. You can still go for an Ursula Creed aggro deck. Both work, particularly with now Sisters being nerfed. I think Denkler is back on the menu. It works. It's very good. It's very solid. You should be able to see play with it. This is my opinion on where all the factions are right now. Hope you enjoyed. See you next time.